Hello, my name's Gavin, this is Genre Books, and this is week 17 of the Read What You Own challenge. The challenge is to read 100 books from these shelves before I buy any new ones. We're nearly at the end, so the challenge is somewhat more simple now. I need to complete this sheet as quickly as I possibly can while still enjoying the books I'm reading. To that end, not only will I be talking about the books I've read this week, but I'll be talking about the books I hope to read during March, which hopefully will get me over the line. There is nothing in the challenge that says I can't receive books, and this week I did receive a book. Thank you to Sean D. Standfast for sending me this whacking great reference work, science fiction, fantasy, and weird fiction magazines. This is, I'm going to guess from the size of it, absolutely comprehensive. It's a reference book, so I won't be reading it cover to cover, but I will, in time, read every single one of these pages. So thank you, Sean. How did I round out February? Last week, I still had some pages left to read of this book, The Pastel City by M. John Harrison, so I finished that on the Sunday, and it's fantastic. I really enjoyed it. It's very immersive and gets you immersed quite quickly, considering it's a fairly slim book. It does pack a lot in. I really enjoyed the sense of impending doom that this gives, and I'll be happy to read and find more books in the Viriconium series out in the wild. I raided my wife's shelves for the next book. This was The London Scene from Virginia Woolf, a collection of 5 essays, I think all published during her lifetime but collated posthumously, and detailing London life in the early years of the 20th century. And some of the places I still walk past maybe once, twice a week, and hearing them described in very different terms it's a nice little eye-opener. And as you can imagine, it's very well written. And she also describes places like St. Paul's, Westminster Abbey, the Houses of Parliament, so places where you would imagine not an awful lot has changed as well. So that would also be an interesting thing to maybe look at the next time I'm wandering past. The next book I read was an ebook, The Cosmic Engineers by Clifford D. Simak. The novel from 1950, based on stories that appeared in Astounding magazine in 1939. This book I read as part of the Pig and Whistle reading group, the Clifford D. Simak reading group organised by Sean D. Standfast, and I joined Sean and Ira and Scott and Pat yesterday for a live stream broadcast, which I shall link below if you want to know all of our thoughts about the book. In brief, I enjoyed it. It's Clifford D. Simak, which I enjoy, and it's pulp, which I really enjoy. In last week's video, I was musing over strategies to get me to 100 books quickly. Cat Jack in the comments helpfully suggested some of my art books. Well, these are jointly owned with my wife, these art books. But I did take that advice, and I read from cover to cover the Rijksmuseum Amsterdam Masterpieces Guide. So this, I don't call it a cheat, although it does have a lot of pictures. There is a fair amount of text in this book and some interesting stuff. I learned some new things. It seems obvious now, but I had no idea that the tropical paradise of Mauritius was named after a guy called Morris. It might be Maurice. The Rijksmuseum when we visited, was undergoing restoration, but still had some absolutely classic and recognisable works. The Dutch Golden Age, one of my favourite. This whole Northern Renaissance, or just after the Northern Renaissance style of painting, I absolutely love. And some of the other pieces here are just absolutely fantastic. I mean, I do not, as a general rule, get excited over dolls' houses, but as a rule, dolls' houses do not look like this. And when you see these things in the flesh, you realise that all of that interior decor is made from the same materials that the real stuff is made from. It's quite something to see. The craftsmanship, these people had very good eyesight, a lot of time on their hands. Well, that's the dolls' houses anyway. Obviously the paintings were the real draw for us going to the museum. I love Avercamp. I learnt from this book that Avercamp was also a deaf mute, which I had no idea. Frans Hals, who I absolutely love. Vermeer, obviously. And I think whole rooms devoted to Rembrandt, and pretty much an entire wall devoted to just this picture, the Night Watch. So I learnt some new things, and it stirred up a lot of memories of visiting the museum as well. So yes, I will possibly, depending on how I go in March, head back to the art shelves to find something else. And back to ebooks for the next book. Finally dipped my toe into the Homes is Where the Heart Is reading event, and it is my new best old friend John Kendrick Bangs that helped me get there. This was a really fun book. R. Holmes and Co. So this takes the conceit that there is a character, Raffles Holmes, who is the son of Sherlock Holmes, but also the grandson on his maternal side of Raffles, the gentleman thief, amateur cracksman, expert cricketer. And it is a proper Holmes pastiche. It has a lot of the hallmarks I'm beginning to recognise from John Kendrick's Bangs as well. It starts with the main character intruding upon the narrator of the story. The narrator of the story is the Bangs cipher, and he uses this to have a little bit of a dig and poke some fun at publishers. But then the stories, which expertly ape Doyle's style, present quite a unique makeup of the character. They are basically acting as a pair of con artists. Raffles Holmes is conflicted. He has the ingenuity and the detective skills and the attention to detail and wide-ranging esoteric knowledge of Sherlock Holmes. But he is always tempted to be nicking stuff like Raffles. And what they do is basically perform some intricate confidence tricks on mostly the rich and the good of New York society in order to extract rewards from them. This is not just a case of stealing something and then claiming the reward once you have, quote unquote, found it, but they come up with more and more inventive ways to do effectively that whilst performing a public service at the same time. It's really sly. It's absolutely hilarious. I love John Kendrick Bangs. I haven't read a Duff one yet. And this is someone who Doyle was a fan of. And he let John Kendrick Bangs create or sort of portray Sherlock Holmes as a character in his Associated Shades novel, The Pursuit of the Houseboat. He didn't let many people write the Sherlock Holmes character, but at the time that he was permitted to do so, Sherlock Holmes was officially dead, having gone over the waterfall with Moriarty. Next up, some non-fiction. I had read some of this before, so it was the case of reading the last 100, 150 pages or so, but this is a unique take on a history book, The Time Traveller's Guide to Medieval Europe. It details a lot about what you will find when you find yourself in the 14th century in England. It covers all types of subjects. The medieval character, law, health, hygiene, what to eat and drink, where you're staying, what you have to wear, what there is to do. And there is an awful lot of information in here. I love that it's written from a second person perspective. And I mean, in short, I'm not giving away any spoilers, but the main advice for travelling to the 14th century England is don't do it. And finally, for completed books, the book I finished yesterday, After 12,000 Years, from Stanton A. Koblenz, another ebook. I'm reading this as part of a project I'm thinking about doing at some point later. Doing some preparatory reading to see if I feel I can do it. But this was a bit of a curate's egg. It's from 1929. It has a pretty wide satirical bent, but the writing isn't all that great. It's a little bit purple prosed, a little bit broad in its strokes, and the satire is done more with a massive sledgehammer rather than with a scalpel. But there is some really interesting ideas here. This is a story about basically a Rip Van Winkle character who finds himself in suspended animation for 12,000 years. So from 1920s New York to a horrific dystopia of the future. It takes a little bit of a liberty with the ideas of evolution. There are echoes of Time Machine from H.G. Wells. There's a little bit of foreshadowing of 1984, although this cannot hold a candle to 1984. We do have superstates at war with each other, although how they go about it is markedly different. And it is poking fun at everybody. It is definitely poking fun at the communists, but I don't think the US political system gets away with much in this book either. I struggle to recommend it because, as I say, it's not a brilliantly written piece, but there are definitely some ideas there. It doesn't help that I'd also started this book at the same time, which is brilliantly written. I need to crack on with this one today. This is a buddy read I'm reading with Debs from Rainer Reads Stuff, Ian Forster, A Room with a View. We recently buddy read Where Angels Fear to Tread. This is the other book he wrote off the back of his experiences in Italy. I'm not that far into it yet, but I absolutely love it. I should imagine I'll be talking about it at greater length. That does, however, lead me nicely into what I will be reading in March. And buddy reads are featuring fairly heavily this month. Once I have finished The Forster, I will be getting started on The Anubis Gates by Tim Powers, which I am reading with Pat from Book Chat with Pat. The week after, I will be buddy reading Dan Simmons' Hyperion with Sean D. Stanfast. This is my latest pick from the tote bag of Mild Peril. Well, in fact, it's just the first book of the latest pick from the tote bag of Mild Peril, but I'm not, during March, reading all of the rest of the Hyperion series. And towards the end of the month, I will be reading The Magic Labyrinth by Philip Jose Farmer, a fantasy science fiction series, Bangsian fantasy, which I have managed to buddy read all my way through so far. I buddy read the first book in this series with Aaron from Aaron Read a Book, and I have read the second and third with Greg from Another Bibliophile Reads, and here we are moving on to the fourth. I will also find time to finish No Name from Wilkie Collins. I'm about 35-40% of the way through this. It started as a noble effort to try to replicate the experience of reading it as the Victorians would have, by getting a couple of chapters every week as it would have appeared in the periodicals. It hasn't really worked. We're just going to read it. This is one I'm reading with my wife. Can't really say buddy read with your key buddy read with your spouse. I have no idea. There are continuing group reads. So the 1001 Nights. This is our second month of reading stories from this collection. I need to catch up with Proust. I have been neglecting him this past few weeks. I will find the time to catch up with this, I promise, because I do enjoy it. It's just this kind of book does not help me get to this 100, which I'm increasingly desperate to do. And the last group read for the month will be the next in the CIMAC, which is Empire, which was originally written by John Campbell, reworked by Clifford D. Simak. There are BookTube events happening in March, and a late breaking one, which I did get tagged in a video from Philip at A Poet Reads to Write, and that is Celtic books. I think because it's St. Patrick's Day during the month of March, everyone seems to forget about St. David's Day, which was yesterday. But I am reading 3 books here. Terror on the Burren, Heart of Burren Stone, and Battle for the Burren by, I'm going to say, Ray O. Lawless. Please correct my pronunciation. It's also March Mystery Madness, and I started yesterday my silly little series, The Marple Cinematic Universe, and I will be reading at least 2 more Miss Marple books this month. So I will be reading A Murder is Announced and At Bertram's Hotel. Continuing my series on Zane Grey, 50 Zanes of Grey, I will be reading The Last of the Plainsmen. Continuing my Project Rabbit Hole series, I want to try to finish the Bangsian section of this. This is fantasy where people have gone to the afterlife. Now, the Magic Labyrinth, the Philip Jose Farmer book, does count towards that. Also, a sequel to a book I read January. This is The Gates of Hell by C.J. Cherry and Janet Morris. Following from Dante's Inferno is going to be Larry Niven and Jerry Purnell's Inferno, where a science fiction author is led through hell by Benito Mussolini. And a book I did mean to read, so I've possibly shown this in a pile of possibilities recently before, Operation Chaos by Paul Anderson. So Bangsian fantasy in the proper sense. We have a vampire and a werewolf going to hell together. I will also be reading one of these books. You'll have to see my video on Thursday, the Quick to Judge challenge, to find out which one it was that I picked. I did pick out in February a lot of thin fantasy to read, and I want to continue with that, not only because I enjoy it, but also these thin books are definitely helping towards the challenge. So I'll hopefully be reading some, if not all of these. Fred Saberhagen, The Black Mountains, the first 3 books in the Swords series from Fritz Leiber, Swords and Deviltry, Swords Against Death, Swords in the Mist. One I didn't get round to, really wanted to last month, didn't quite manage to squeeze it in, Tilt Angle by R.W. Mackleworth. And some Ballantine adult fantasy, Beyond the Golden Stair by Hannes Bock, and At the Edge of the World by Lord Dunsany. There is also Roger's Cheap Old Book Club are reading The King of Elfland's Daughter by Lord Dunsany, so I might read that as well, or instead of At the Edge of the World. There's a lot to choose from. Depending on how I'm going during the month, I might try to bolster my numbers with a couple of quickies. So RUR, this is Rossum's Universal Robots. I want to read that, and I've heard people talk about it because it's been a recent group read for the Endless Drama BookTube group. Also, The Man Who Would Be King by Rudyard Kipling, I think would just be nice, quick works to add an extra check mark on, perhaps a week where I'm weighed down by a more weighty book like Hyperion or The Magic Labyrinth. There's also stuff I'll be reading that doesn't count towards the challenge because I'm an idiot. So, continuing Planet Stories. There is a good Planet Stories issue coming up with a lot of famous names. And for March Mystery Madness, I'm going to find a nice detective story pulp and also a spicy detective story pulp. So hopefully those will be fun, and hopefully there's enough there to get me over the line. If not, I may find I'm reading about some stained glass to try and get a quick book out of the way. But until next time,